Waitress, can I have another drink, please? I'd like to formally introduce myself.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has to be something you did not expect. But you know what? Let's just go for it. Let's see what happens. I am your host, DJ Mainstream, the voice of the voiceless, John R. A Call for the Government, and welcome to the Bell to Bell podcast. Yes, this is another wrestling podcast, but this is a little bit different. This is a wrestling podcast from somebody who's been around the wrestling business a little bit, but also has been on the outside of it. I plan to discuss several things here on the Bell to Bell podcast, but it's not myself. I'm not alone in this. My other co-host, Blackout the Rebel, a longtime wrestling fan, he will give you a little bit of his biography in today's episode. My other co-host, which I am very happy that she joined the team. If you not remember the WVMR network days, there was this show on the network hosted by Uptight. Uptight has now also joined us here on the Bell to Bell podcast. And right now, this three-headed monster of knowledgeable, opinionated, and fans of pro wrestling and all of pro wrestling will give y'all something each week or maybe bi-weekly. I'm not even sure. We haven't even discussed it yet. But you know what? We want to do it. We have the ability to do it. So we're going for it. This first episode is more so just to get you introduced on who we are, our feelings towards pro wrestling currently. You know what? Let's do it this way. Myself, Uptight, and Blackout the Rebel, we're going to bring you this first episode, give you an in-depth on why we love pro wrestling, why do we enjoy it, and you know what? Let's throw a hot take in there as well, and let's get the interwebs really talking about this podcast. But first, let's start with me. I am DJ Mainstream, the voice of the voiceless. I've been around the wrestling business or fell in love with the wrestling business at a very young age. My first incarnations of loving wrestling has to go back to when I first lived here in Queens. I'm at a very young age. I was born in Harlem, raised in the South Bronx, but when I moved to Queens, roughly at, I want to say maybe 13, 14 years old, I really got into like the thick of it, of the WWF, Monday Night Wars with WCW. Yes, I am an attitude kid in a sense, but it was more so just the reason, honestly, and this is legit, this is probably the first time I ever mentioned this to anybody. It was a reason for me to stay up late. Like most kids, you know, you got to get up early for school. It's like usually a 5 a.m., 5:30 a.m., 6 a.m. wake up. But for me, I always saw it as a chance because my mother, who was also a wrestling fan, she loved the Big Show. Absolutely adored this man. So because of that, I said, you know what? Let me see about this Big Show guy. Let's watch it every Monday. But of course, I actually started enjoying what I was watching. Every bit of it. Everything from Kurt Angle being this Olympic medalist, now crossing over into the wrestling world. Stone Cold Steve Austin bucking the system and going against his boss. The Rock being smooth, calm, collected, always so dapper, but also strong on the mic. I fell in love with the characters, and I started to really understand who they are, what they're trying to get to, with the common goal of pitting the opponent 1, 2, 3 to win either fame, notoriety, championships, money, opportunities. I started realizing around that time that as I'm growing older, now I'm getting into high school, you know, I didn't know what I wanted to do in life. I really did not. I've tried my best to hone in on one core job, but I got to the point where I started really falling in love with DJing. But during the time that I was selling CDs out of my book bag as a DJ in high school, I always had that thing in the back of my mind about wrestling. Of course, when I used to go down to, everybody knows the Bowery area, Delancey Street, that section, Chinatown, that section of New York. Down there was not only some of the best places to get blank CDs, since I was making my lunch money from selling like custom CDs, but this was always the perfect place to do some tape trading. And there was a place down there, I do not remember the name, do not quote me on it. If you're from the New York area, you probably know this place, but it was in the back. Now, of course, in the back, there was this, I think it was a purple or pink curtain. Could have been blue. It was always dark. And that back was, the triple X section, the sex section, the porn and shit. But right before you reached the porn area, there was tapes of some classic wrestling. And do not quote me on it. I'm a wrestling fan through and through, but remembering every core place where these tapes that I was watching was coming from, what you want to get out of me is what I actually watched in the match. I'm talking about this was early Andre the Giant days, big afro, with the red trunks, I think blue boots. It's got to be from the Memphis days, to be honest, because I remember there was a lot of Jerry Lawler I used to watch, a lot of classic Jerry Lawler matches. Lanny Poffo, God, I remember Big Ernie Ladd, big fucking dude, man. But yeah, these were tapes I used to watch repeatedly because I actually started to study the moves and the build-up and understanding, letting the crowd like simmer a little bit to build up for the big baby face. I started to learn the lingo, the baby faces, heels. I picked up on it so much. In real life, I'm going to say it like this. In my life, I've been big on underdogs. I'm a Knicks fan, New York Knicks fan through and through. Let's go Knicks. If you're listening to this now, we're in the middle of a bit of a winning streak. I hope it just retains and goes on and on and on. But Knicks have always been seen like the underdog of the NBA. Same thing goes for my New York Mets. Hopefully Steve Cohen can drop a bag on somebody good this year. So, no, I get my New York Mets back into it. Like, if anybody knows me, I've always been the guy who supported the underdog. So throughout the whole time, I'm watching WWF and all the superstars there, but I'm also turning into WCW. I was one of those guys, one of those kids that had the last button on his remote. And I'm watching WWF, but also watching WCW and watching the Cruiserweights and the amazing Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, Psychosis, La Parka, the early days of Chris Jericho. I fell in love with the high flying moves because as much as I love WWF, they weren't really giving me that. And I enjoyed the hardcore shit, of course, but WCW was giving me those cruiserweights, and I love that high fly action. I'm not the tallest guy. I was somewhat fast in high school. I played a little basketball for the basketball team. So understanding I'm not this big muscular guy, I can't relate to those big muscular guys. But I can relate to the Eddie Guerreros of the world. I can relate to the Dean Malenkos of the world, to, Man of 1,000 Holes, like Perry Saturn. These are people characters I started to really like. But I'm also from New York. And if you're from New York and you love the Knicks, after a certain time on a Saturday night, about 2, 3 a.m., you were staying up to watch ECW. Yeah, I'm also an ECW guy. So I also loved watching Paulie Dangerously, Paul Heyman doing what he does. Bam Bam Bigelow, Taz, Sabu, Rob Van Dam, Spike Dudley, Big Dick Dudley, Bubba Ray and Devon Dudley, the whole Dudley clan, Tommy Dreamer. I enjoyed ECW. My favorite was Shane Douglas, the franchise. I enjoyed the underdog story of ECW and WCW against the bigger company. So, when everything started convoluting back in 2001 during the invasion times, I was in there. Like, you giving me all my stars. Of course, I didn't have my Sting, but I had my DDP. I was upset about that, but I got over it because I still got some of the guys I enjoyed. I was a Mark Jindrak fan. I enjoyed Chuck Palumbo. I enjoyed Chuck Palumbo even down to when he had the biker gimmick. I'm a wrestling fan through and through. So when you understand the level of my passion sometimes on some of the things I'll discuss on this podcast, you'll see why doing this podcast, it has to get out of my head. Like, that's how I feel. It has to get out of my head. And I know I'm not the only one who thinks like this when it comes to the wrestling business. So some of my opinions are going to be, judged on. I'm also a DJ, semi-retired. I'm also a person who's involved in the music industry in some shape, form, or fashion. So I'm used to opinions. I'm used to people being against those opinions. The great part for wrestling is it makes for good conversation, and hence why we're here with the Bell to Bell podcast. Right now, in the current state of wrestling, I'm enjoying everything as much as I can. Of course, I still watch WWE like everybody else does. I love AEW. I've been watching them from the very beginning. I'm a fan of both. I want everybody to win because I'm big on, if you know me from the music side of things with Voiceless music, I'm big on everybody having a job and everybody prospering, everybody eating. WWE and AEW operating at the same time is good food for everyone. I'm not just talking about the wrestlers. I'm also talking about the people in catering. I'm talking about the people who put the food together and stuff for the wrestlers, for the arenas, for the fans, for everyone, because there's something always to watch. Someone always has a job, and at the end of the day, it's only entertainment. The more, the better. But yeah, I've watched AEW from day one. I'm still a fan of TNA. I'm also a very big TNA kid. I got kind of tired of WCW and WWE, and the whole invasion thing started really pissing me off the way it ended. So I picked up on TNA. I am a big AJ Styles guy, big Samoa Joe guy, big Fallen Angels Christopher Daniels guy. I kind of originally got this idea in my music lane from the thought process of Christopher Daniels. Once upon a time, they used to say Christopher Daniels is the king of the indies because he'll pop up in so many shows and show the fuck out. And it's like, damn, this guy is really fucking good. And I picked up on that and decided, you know what? I wanted to be that same type of king of the indies. So you'll see me, at that time, I started picking up on showing up at showcases, showing up at fashion shows, showing up at award shows, but still doing my radio show. Like, I wanted to be that same that thought process that people had about Christopher Daniels. That's where the idea came from. Also, my nickname, Voice of the Voiceless, of course, came from CM Punk's promo years ago on Raw. My love for wrestling and my fandom for wrestling comes from it. It gave me something, It gave me something to build upon and surround myself with during good and bad. I've had some horrible times in life, but I always had wrestling. It's something I've always fell back on. I really like where I'm at now personally, that I can give my opinion, not feel like it's overwhelming, still do my own podcast, but do this as well. I'm really want to make it clear. I plan to make this just as prevalent a part of the Voices Music Network, just as my Make the Call podcast. It will not get shunned. If you're a fan of both, be a fan of both. But I want to not limit myself in what I want to do with not only podcasting, but also being a part of something more. So with this, I want to interview wrestlers. I know some personally, some that I'm really good friends with to this day. Some I wish they were still here so I could interview them. I was starting to build something with Ashley Massaro. For those of you who know, she used to be not only a Playboy cover girl, but she was also in the WWE. Wow, it's tough to even talk about it. When I first started getting back into radio, after my original WVMR New York closed, I wanted to bring her on because I know she was into radio, but I know she was big on supporting people and getting other people involved when it comes to a passion, especially if they're wrestling fans. And if you were genuine, Ashley loved working with you. This is something that is very well known. So when I randomly jumped in her inbox one day and asked, hey, would you love being interviewed and being a part of this network, we hit it off. It was a regular conversation one-on-one. things turned for the worse for me in my personal life. And then she passed away. It fucking sucks because it's like, that was someone that would have loved to be a part of something like this. And not only just for wrestling, but someone I would love to interview, especially with everything going on in the world of wrestling right now. But yeah, I know wrestlers that I would love to interview, sit them down, get to conversate with. I used to own a wrestling company, Imperial World Wrestling, that was then sold to my good friend Special T, Tom Frazier, who now runs it under the brand of Technique to Training Academy in Brooklyn. He also runs his own federation as well. Please follow him, Special T QPO, if I'm not mistaken. But through that, I also grew my fandom for several wrestlers who were well known in the northeastern area. I also wrote for Pro Wrestling Post, which is a wrestling news media company. Through that, I grow fandom for Christian Casanova, who you guys now know as Carmelo Hayes. I wrote about the early days of that man's career. I've wrote about Darby Allin. I've worked with several other wrestlers and wrestling companies to get my articles out there. I'm a 205 Live guy. Like, I'm very entrenched in the idea of understanding this business. And I think being able to have this podcast to now get my thoughts out there, it's going to be nothing but fun. Before I close up my section of introducing myself, my hot take. My hot take is interesting. It's switched up several times leading up into recording this. This one I'm going to keep on brand to wrestling and not talk about anything going on outside of the ropes. I'm recording this currently on a Saturday. This is the night after Cody Rhodes was announcing to making his WrestleMania decision for this year's WrestleMania. Is he going to choose Seth Rollins? And this is after Seth Rollins made this big, convoluted, over-the-top grandeur of understanding to like option B for Cody Rhodes on Raw. And what the thought process was, you can choose Roman and go down that path and choose the WWE Universal Championship, right? Undisputed Universal Championship. But think of what you can do with the workhorse title as your championship on the grandest stage of them all at WrestleMania, yada, yada, yada. So, of course, all of us are like, okay, why is that happening? Also, understanding Seth has his injury. Here comes SmackDown. Now, this is also in the back of your mind that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson is also floating around as now the new board member on TKO. For those who don't know, TKO owns WWE. Now we've created the whole scenario here. 9:45 hits. The Rock's music cues. Cody gives us this whole speech about how he still wants that title. And he wants to come for that title, but not at WrestleMania. We're now fast forward. It is now the next day. My hot take is a scenario. You guys, if you're used to me, if you're going to get used to me, please get used to this. My scenarios are over the top, but I may have a good one here. Work with me. Cody Rhodes chooses Seth Rollins at WrestleMania. That's good, right? I guess, because we wanted him to win the title, but it's a title. It's the World Heavyweight Championship. It's the title that WWE has built upon as being the title for Monday Night Raw. All right? My scenario. Cody versus Rollins, night one, main event, WrestleMania. Cody wins. Slugfest. 5 minutes after that bell rings and Cody wins, Damian Priest runs down, cashes in his Money in the Bank, and basically in Seth Rollins' face, the person he's been clashing and teasing and all this other shit for the past umpteen months with that fucking briefcase, he finally cashes in and steals Seth Rollins' thunder in a sense and pulls off the heist of this version of the heist of the century. I don't think it gets any more crazy than that. I mean, you got Seth Rollins, you write him off. Cody begins his chase. Eventually, the draft happens at the end of this year. New rights happen. Cody jumps over and gets drafted to SmackDown. Hey, we do this all over again. And Cody goes to his chase that way. That's my hot take. Will it happen? Who knows? But I say, let's enjoy the ride.